You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking at the moment. Almost 2 years after former US Congress Speaker Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, she visited Dharamshala as a member of a US congressional delegation led by US House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul to meet Tibetan spiritual leader the Dalai Lama. This visit has angered China, with China now urging the US president not to sign the Tibet bill.
Your Holiness, it's...
Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un signed an agreement that pledges mutual aid if either country faces aggression, a strategic pact that comes as both face escalating standoffs with the West. The families of victims in two Boeing 737 MAX plane crashes have asked for prosecutions and a fine of $24.8 billion for the deadliest corporate crime in US history. Suhas Subramaniam has won the Democratic primary in Virginia's 10th congressional district, becoming the first Indian American to succeed in this crowded race. And the world's three richest billionaires are in a fierce race for first place. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos and Bernard Arnault have occupied the top three spots on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index for 94% of the year. Well, our big focus, the unprecedented India messaging to China. A delegation of US lawmakers met the exiled Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, in Himachal Pradesh's Dharamshala, as we've extensively covered. A bipartisan bill passed this month by the US House of Representatives. That bill aims to push Beijing to hold talks with Tibetan leaders, stalled since the year 2010, to secure a negotiated agreement on Tibet and spur China to tackle Tibetan aspirations on historical, cultural, religious and linguistic identity. Among this delegation were the two authors of the act. That act is titled Promoting a Resolution to the Tibet-China Dispute Act, or the Resolve Tibet Act, along with Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the US House of Representatives. This unprecedented meeting, facilitated by India, has angered Beijing, which urged the United States to recognize the anti-China and separatist nature of the Dalai clique and warned against wrong messaging. But in allowing this meeting, was India also sending a message to China? Here are the details.
A bipartisan delegation of US lawmakers meeting the Dalai Lama in Dharamshala at the headquarters of the Tibetan government in exile. The unprecedented visit facilitated by India. The US group gave an assurance that President Biden will soon sign the Resolve Tibet Act, aimed at enhancing US support for resolving the Tibet dispute with China.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with his message of knowledge and tradition and compassion and purity of soul and love, he will live a long time and his legacy will live forever. But to you, President of China, you'll be gone and nobody will give you credit for anything.
The delegation also said they would not let China decide on the Dalai Lama's successor.
And I tell our Chinese friends, this message is for you because you're waiting for this Dalai Lama to die. They are not bothered about the living 14th Dalai Lama, but they are more concerned about the yet to come 15th Dalai Lama to use the reincarnation as a political tool.
But allowing the visit by the US group on Indian soil, a not so subtle message to China. The Modi government making it clear to the Chinese that non-resolution of the boundary crisis can result into many thorny issues coming to the fore. The Chinese embassy in India already had a sharp reaction. They posted, "We urge the US side to fully recognize the anti-China separatist nature of the Dalai group, honor the commitments the US has made to China, stop sending the wrong signal to the world." The Dalai Lama, who will be visiting the US soon for medical treatment, had a message of peace.
We should take care of this world. world, irrespective of what religion, what tradition.
In recent months, there have been attempts to normalize strained ties with China, but this visit could lead to a backlash. Gargi Rawat for NDTV.
Well, to decipher what's happening between the lines, we have with us Gauri Dwivedi at the moment with a live update. Also joining us on the broadcast, political affairs commentator Einar Tangen. Let's go ahead, go right across to Gauri first. Gauri, as we had discussed, this visit and interaction has riled China at a time when Beijing and Washington are struggling to improve ties.
Parmeshwar, this is a long-standing issue between the US and China, and in the past as well, there have been very loud voices that have come in support of the Tibetan cause in US. Unfortunately, the talks between China and Tibet failed about since 2010, and there wasn't much of a response coming in from America, and it's taken almost 14 years for American lawmakers to come back to the cause of Tibet. And I believe that Nancy Pelosi, along with 6 other lawmakers, the fact that they met Dalai Lama, His Holiness, in Dharamshala, which is the administrative headquarters of the Tibetan government in exile, is very significant. It just also paves the way that this is an issue, the humanitarian cause that they have picked up in the past, that they will now carry this forward. It has larger implications for the US-China relationship as well, because almost 18 months back, Nancy Pelosi picked up the cause of Taiwan. She was there in Taipei, and now she's following that up with a meeting in Dharamshala with His Holiness. This is more significant because while the Taiwan issue is being picked up by a lot of countries, the issue related to the Tibetan cause hasn't been picked up so much by other countries. And the fact that Nancy Pelosi has gone there along with 6 other lawmakers indicates that this is now a major issue that will be picked up, hopefully, by democratic world.
Well, Gauri, thank you so much for contextualizing the current updates for us. Let's also go across to Einar Tangen, who's with us live from Beijing at the moment. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry has urged Washington, sir, not to support the Tibetan independence and said the White House must not sign the bill into law or China will take resolute measures. Without elaborating on what they may be?
Well, this is a very typical. China is trying to signal its displeasure. Exactly what they'll do, no one knows. There's the sanctions going back and forth between the U.S. and China are already fairly extreme. But this seems like it was deliberately aimed at enraging China. This is something like Taiwan, very close to their heart. Remember, the Dalai Lama left after a failed coup attempt to invoke some sort of independent Tibet. Tibet at the time, average life expectancy was 42 years old. 95% of the people were illiterate, and they did not own land. They were actually owned as serfs, and they just worked the land in behalf of the nobles and also the Buddhist monasteries. So it was not an ideal situation. It's kind of strange in terms of the timing. After, as pointed out by my colleague, after 14 years, all of a sudden this is an issue. At the same time that the U.S. is embroiled in Gaza and undergoing tremendous amounts of criticism for its human rights violations by providing the bombs and bullets using killed people. There are also, issues going on in the South China Seas. This is after it was disclosed that the U.S. had a disinformation campaign against Chinese vaccines during COVID, which probably caused lives. So there's some feeling, I believe, in Beijing that the U.S. is trying to divert attention from negative issues and make China the focus of everything.
Well, US-China relations are set to become more complicated, with Tibet now emerging as a new point of contention. But my colleague Gauri also has a question for you, Mr. Tangen. Go ahead, Gauri.
Mr. Tangen, my question to you, sir, is that there is a very clear message that the lawmakers have sent, which is that Beijing has been trying to erase Tibetan culture. And to that effect, bringing the Tibetan issue to the forefront, bringing the human rights violations to the forefront and the fact that the bill could be signed, that means that there could be a strong message coming from the entire democratic world. China can't just erase that by saying it disagrees.
Well, Gauri, I think that's a statement, much less a question. But yes, the U.S. is passing this, not the world. It's not something at the UN. As you pointed out, the UN, the United States
So
and
UN
China
cannot
are
pass it
loggerheaded.
because of your veto. UN cannot pass it because of the China veto.
It's not my veto. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm simply commenting on how I perceive Beijing is handling this. In terms of the veto, yes, they would be vetoed, but that's true about many other issues, including Gaza and the U.S. and things like this. Ukraine also figures highly into this. There is vetoes in terms of the Afghan war, of Iraq, a number of issues where the U.S. has acted as a rogue state. So this idea that somehow that China is all to blame for this, as you pointed out, why is it taking 14 years? Why is this particular time? China is not trying to erase the Tibetan culture. If you go there, you'd understand that. They have improved the lives of the people there. The people there do not want to go back to the system of serfdom that they lived under when the Dalai Lama and the nobility of the Tibetan culture were running the country. So, this time has passed. Yes, there are contentious issues about who will be the next Dalai Lama, but it's a political issue at this point, really not to do with any kind of enlightened cause. Even the Dalai Lama himself said, look, people have to kind of get along and stop trying to manufacture issues. And I think that is the main takeaway here.
Mr. Tangent, the fact is that you said manufacture issues. There is no such thing that His Holiness has ever said. He's in fact stayed away from political administration of Tibet since 2011. The only thing he said is that try and find a middle path. Tibet is not even looking at independence. It is looking at autonomously managing the region. Even that is now something that is unacceptable to China. The question is, will China come back to the negotiating table after this bill is signed?
Okay, so you have experience with this yourself in terms of Pradesh. These are, and Kashmir, these are issues that are internal to countries. Tibet is part of China. This idea that 1/3 of China's landmass will be independently governed by an outside body, not elected, but simply walking in and reclaiming that it has sovereignty over a country that it did not take care of. So yes, you can certainly have the opinion that you dislike China, but you should stick to the facts. The Dalai Lama did in his last statement. He said, look, the world belongs to everybody. And I took that to mean that you should not be trying to create conflict.
Right. As always, thank you so much, Mr. Tangent, for joining us with your thoughts. And thanks so much, Gauri, for joining us with that update. The other crucial story we're tracking, a diplomat in Saudi Arabia has said that 68 Indian nationals have died during the Hajj pilgrimage this year, marked by searing heat, bringing the overall tally to more than 600. In fact, officials have said that they have confirmed around 68 dead. Some are because of natural causes, and they had many old age pilgrims as well. Some are due to weather conditions. That's what's assumed. This is what the diplomat who spoke on the condition of anonymity has told the news agency AFP. We are awaiting a confirmation from our Ministry of External Affairs, but the new toll comes after 2 Arab diplomats told the news agency AFP that 550 deaths had been recorded during the Hajj, one of the 5 pillars of Islam that all Muslims with the means must perform at least once. Well, our other big focus, the Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a mutual defense pact with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un after talks in Pyongyang, with Kim saying it amounted to an alliance. The agreement underlines a major shift in Moscow's stance towards Pyongyang and will likely see the pair boost their military cooperation. Analysts assert that this rendezvous in North Korea adds to an impression of authoritarian states pulling together to challenge the democratic world in a way unseen for decades. You also cannot ignore that Russia has closer ties with China and Iran. There are signs, however, The Chinese leader Xi Jinping fears the optics of being grouped with Putin and Kim, as per many geopolitical experts. But while the leaders meeting in the globally isolated Soviet-style capital of Pyongyang provided an opportunity for the two autocrats to discuss how to expand their cooperation, observers say it will have consequences far beyond the battlefield in Ukraine. Many question whether this relationship is just about necessity, while geopolitical experts and analysts argue it is not. We are seeing that the two states forge an increasingly concerted united front in alignment against the United States as well as the West. And these divisions were only underscored by the timing of this visit, which comes on the heels of Putin's meeting with Xi Jinping last month, and after democratic leaders from the G7 used a summit in Italy to again show their solidarity against Moscow's war. It also comes as North Korea has railed against growing security cooperation between the US and its allies South Korea and Japan, raising concerns with its escalated rhetoric and ongoing tests to bolster an extensive illegal weapons program. But at the moment, it remains publicly unknown just what Pyongyang is receiving in return for its support for Russia's war. But governments from Seoul to Washington will be watching closely for signs of how far the warring Russian leader, who in the past supported international controls on North Korea's illegal weapons program, is willing to go to back Kim's bellicose regime. The welcome hug on the tarmac at 3 a.m. The honor guard of mounted soldiers, a red carpet rolled out, the huge portraits of Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin hanging side by side in the center of Pyongyang. All of this was designed to worry the West.
Сегодня мы вместе боремся с гегемонизмом и неоколониальными практиками США и их сателлитов.
Vladimir Putin has now signed a deal with Kim Jong Un that includes a mutual defense pact if either Russia or North Korea is attacked. Kim Jong Un says both countries have a fiery friendship, while Putin added that this new pact provides for mutual defense and Russia may develop weapons and technology ties. The inclusion of a mutual defense clause in their comprehensive strategic partnership, which Kim described as an alliance, will add to the West's alarm over growing economic and military ties between North Korea and Russia. The courting of Kim, which includes gifts of limousines and the Strategic Partnership Pact, has already alarmed the United States and its Asian allies. The devil will be in the detail of the Russia-North Korea deal, which has not been released. But it will add to the insecurity in nations such as South Korea and Japan about the growing tensions between Washington and its allies on the emerging axis of China, Russia and North Korea. While China has kept itself out of trilateral deals so far, Beijing is North Korea's largest trading partner, and Putin has also sought to maximize his political relations with President Xi Jinping. Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV. Welcome back. The United States and India continue to chart an ambitious course for the initiative on critical and emerging technology. But is there a lull in India-US relations? My colleague Maha Siddiqui caught up with the former US ambassador to India, Tim Romer. Here's what he told NDTV.
I have with me the former US ambassador to India, Timothy Romer here. Many thanks for speaking with NDTV.
My pleasure. Nice to be with you again.
Thank you, Ambassador Romer. My first question is with regards to the number of countries that are in election mode this year or have finished their elections like in India, but the US continues to be in the campaign mode at this moment. So are we likely then to see some sort of a lull in the relationship between India and US till the end of this year when the elections in the US get over, even as we are seeing the US NSA Jake Sullivan in India at the moment?
Well, listen, I do not think you're going to see a lull in the relationship. I think you're going to continue to see opportunities to deepen it, strengthen it, improve it. But back to the elections, which I think is a fascinating topic. About 4 billion people in the world are voting this year in elections. The people of India just voted. What a great sign to the world that democracy works, that they carried it off without a hitch, and that there was no claim of fraud or corruption in the election. Everybody accepted the results, and a coalition government was formed. And now there's every opportunity for the U.S. and India, whoever is elected in their great country and in our country, to continue this strategic relationship that is only going to continue to improve and deepen as the defining relationship of the 21st century moving forward.
So currently, as Jake Sullivan is in India, the focus is on ISET, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology. How do you see the two countries progressing on this aspect? And I want to specifically want you to answer a question about whether the elements within ISET, for instance, supply chain, for instance, semiconductors, are they in some sense giving us an indication that this relationship perhaps is based on the commonality of an adversary, China, or does it stand on its own?
It stands on its own. Certainly there's a convergence, a strategic convergence between the United States and India with respect to China's threat to both of our countries. And so that has had us sit down and work with each other a little bit more intently. But what is so unique and so special about the U.S.-India relationship is the broader question of people-to-people ties, of sharing democratic values, of so many Indians traveling to the United States and staying here and becoming part of our system, whether they're CEOs or whether they're running for office, and contributing to growing our economy and creating jobs and businesses here in the United States that strengthen not just the United States as a world power, but the relationship between the two. Now, there will be a lot of opportunities moving forward between the two countries. Supply chains are shifting around the world. Not only are many going out of China or new ones not going into China, some are homeshore to America, some may go to India or Vietnam, some may go to Mexico with the election of their new president down there, who won resoundingly with 60% of the vote and can get a lot done, possibly economically, between the United States and Mexico. But there's also the technology component here. The United States has decided we can't share our technology with China. That is going to be a fierce competition moving forward. We can share it with India. So in AI, in quantum computing, in chip making, in all kinds of areas, from the moon, and congratulations to India for its landing on the moon, to the deep oceans. There are many opportunities for us to work together there. And then you have AUKUS, which was nuclear submarine cooperation between Australia, the UK, and the United States. What's AUKUS 3.0 look like? Cables underneath the sea, more AI. Does India get into that in the future? Is that an opportunity for India to get into AUKUS 4.0? All kinds of opportunities moving forward, including human skilling and education issues that bring our two countries together.
Do you think that India would perhaps wait and watch as far as the indication you're giving on AUKUS, considering that it hasn't shown any indication of being part of a sort of a military grouping? Remember Quad, it was dormant for almost a decade before India and Japan finally got into it, in Australia.
There are many ways to start to see if there's compatibility for a 4.0 AUKUS between the United States and India and other countries. As you mentioned previously, Jake Sullivan is currently in India meeting with Ajit Doval and Minister Jaishankar to talk about where does this technology fit. We're now doing joint production of fighter airplane engines together, helicopter Apache engines, howitzers. The platforms are expanding and improving. Where does that lead us later on? And what possibilities are there? Quad gives us the opportunity. If you had told me or most Americans involved in our national security 10 years ago that the United States would be docking naval ships in ports in India, those would be almost seamlessly interoperable and going through repairs and all kinds of improvements, nobody would have thought that was possible. And again, we have that happening as we speak. So there are all kinds of things there that look for new avenues for improvement and deepening this trajectory going forward. There will be challenges in the relationship, and the wonderful thing about the U.S.-India relationship is so far, we've been able to talk through our challenges, whether that be Russian oil, whether that be a human rights issue, whether that be a disagreement on a Ukraine issue. Those things have been artfully, diplomatically, and strategically managed.
Ambassador Timothy Romame, thanks for speaking with NDTV.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Indian American Suhas Subramaniam has won the Democratic primary for a congressional seat in Virginia's 10th Congressional District, defeating 11 other candidates. Here's our report. After perhaps the ugliest primary of the 2024 US election season so far, Suhas Subramaniam, an Indian American, has won the Democratic primary for a congressional seat in Virginia, defeating 11 other candidates, including another fellow Indian American, Crystal Cole.
There's nothing we won't do for our kids. You name it, we do it. And the same goes for fighting for their future.
It's why I served in the Obama White House and was a volunteer firefighter in EMT. And it's why in the state Senate, I fought to keep our kids safe from gun violence.
And in Congress, I'll stand up to MAGA extremists and protect abortion rights. It won't be easy, but they're worth it. I'm Suhas Subramaniam, and I approve this message.
The first Indian American, South Asian, and Hindu to be elected to the Virginia General Assembly in 2019 and to the Virginia State Senate in 2023, Subramaniam is running for the US House of Representatives from the 10th Congressional District of Virginia, which has a sizable Indian American population. Suhas has repeated during his campaign that he was running for Congress to ensure a better future for the United States. Suhas's parents are from Bengaluru and Chennai and moved to the US because they wanted to start a new life there. Suhas was born in Houston. In a primary marked by mudslinging and late attacks, Suhas Subramaniam had to beat back a report that he had improperly put employees of his state Senate staff on his campaign payroll, an accusation he says is categorically false. But his victory over 11 other Democratic candidates in the contest to succeed a retiring Democratic representative, Jennifer Wexton, is likely to be a relief for National Democrats who had watched anxiously as another frontrunner in the race, State Representative Dan Helmer, faced calls to drop out over an accusation of sexual harassment. Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV.